Hey all. So, as some of you may know, I have recently been playing Purgatory quite a bit on my alt account. And I still agree with the general consensus that this is a champion on which Kabam missed. She does not really have a place in the competitive meta at the moment. However, I think that she came much closer to being a success than she gets credit for, and I don't think it would take a whole lot for her to actually be one of my favorite champions in the game. So, what I'm going to do here is go over the basics of how she fits together. This is not going to be a full guide. Talk about why I find that promising, why it's not enough, and how I would fix it. So, starting off on her abilities, basically all that separates her from a 2016 champion in the beginning is that she has this energy resistance, which is pretty significant. She is completely immune to Incinerate, which would include something like Mephisto's aura, and all of her attacks deal energy instead of physical, which comes into play for certain nodes or resistances, that kind of thing. Those are helpful, but it's not a whole lot on its own. So it then becomes very important to understand her bloodthirst mechanic and the quote extra abilities that she gets from the various class souls. So bloodthirst in general is kind of like the way that Man Thing or Gladiator Hulk work, where the more that they hit the opponent or the opponent hits them, this number rises from 0 to 100 and begins to fall off when you have not gained any in a while, which normally means when you have to bait out an opponent's special or wait for some effect to expire. Now, one crucial improvement over the systems that those two champions have is that Purgatory can also gain her bloodthirst on a well-timed block, which also allows her to gain some power when she parries. This means that she has an element to her playstyle kind of like Blade or Guardian, where parrying the opponent's special is very beneficial because it helps your bloodthirst from falling off, and I really like that skill interplay into it, and I think that when Gladiator Hulk eventually gets reworked, that's something that could be incorporated. Similar to with those two champions, she does have ways of kind of locking it in at a value. Man Thing holds on to his for a little bit if the opponent has a buff or is a villain, and Gladiator Hulk locks his at 100 when he gets there. She also locks hers at 100. It is important to note, though, that unlike with both of those champions, Gladiator Hulk resets to 70, and Man Thing's never hard resets to 0. When Purgatory comes out of her locked-in mode, her demonic rampage, she does reset all the way to 0. And that makes it that much worse that, unlike their abilities, her rampage is an all or nothing. Gladiator Hulk and Man Thing gain abilities and, more importantly, gain significant attack boosts as their currencies, as their meters reach 100. Purgatory gets nothing on the way up, other than some power gain, which makes up for the fact that she gains less power from landing hits. And when she gets there, she gets all of the benefit at once. Which means that playing Purgatory anywhere below 100 Bloodthirst and playing her while Demonic Rampage is active are two very, very different experiences. And it means that if you are having any trouble holding on to Rampage, whether it's because the node makes it difficult to perform well-timed blocks, or like I said, if you're having trouble baiting out repeated specials, anything along those lines, this gets very difficult very quickly. But assuming you do get into Rampage, let's talk about the payoff. So this looks like a tiny attack increase, but that's because this is a 4-star, because this is the only version of her I have on my main account. It's roughly an 80-85% increase over her base attack. It is significant. You absolutely feel the damage boost. And like it says, it is paused whenever she fills a bar of power or during her special attacks, which is where this next part, that the second medium burns some of her power to inflict an incinerate, actually becomes a good thing, because that is a painfully weak Incinerate at all rarity levels for her, but draining your own power while you've stacked up these small passive power gains from gaining Bloodthirst from landing hits in your combo means that you are going to drop below a bar of power when you have already locked in power gain that's going to get you over it after your combo finishes. So you can actually play her such that while you're in Rampage, you are constantly going back and forth over a single bar of power, and you can keep Rampage paused for a long time. And that is very cool, but it does still bother me that it's such an all or nothing, because if you are constantly focusing on keeping Rampage up by crossing those bars of power, then you are not using special attacks. And notice this next line of text, which is that whenever she uses special attacks, she gets that same damage boost again via a Fury buff as long as she's in Rampage, which means that her kit is built around using special attacks in Rampage, and if you are using special attacks in Rampage, then you can't stay in Rampage, which is fine, it's something that you're building towards, but the fact that there is no benefit at all until you reach that 100 on the meter, and then it resets all the way to 0 after you've cashed it in, can make playing her fairly frustrating at times. There's a lot of, well, back to square one places in her playstyle. And so I think that what should be done here is either that attack increase should scale based on her Bloodthirst, but the other benefits of Demonic Rampage should be locked behind getting to 100, or they should adjust the speed of her cooldown, kind of like they did with Torch's Temperature, because that small buff to him made him way more playable in way more fights, and that's kind of what she needs. So to talk about the specials themselves, the Special 1 does help you gain extra Bloodthirst on top of what you're getting from your combos and get to Rampage faster. So that is good, and you will end up using it. If you're in Rampage, it technically regens, but the Special 1's base damage is absurdly low, and so using it to gain Bloodthirst feels kind of bad in the first place, and then using it when you're in Rampage feels like a total waste. Like, in Rampage, with the damage bonus from that and the Fury from throwing a special attack in that mode, throwing the Special 1 against a champion with her armor break up will still only regen you like 3% of your health, maybe. And for her only source of healing and a benefit that you only get while in Rampage, that's pretty pathetic. And this is actually one of the first things that I would fix about her, is that because you have to be in Rampage to use this at all, the healing does need to be improved. And I will get to that again later because it actually is based on another improvement. Now, the Special 2, I honestly have no notes. This is her bread and butter in a standard fight. The degen is decent. When you throw the degen in Rampage with the extra Fury, it feels absolutely respectable. Like, this is the damage payoff for her whole kit. And the fact that you can throw it unblockable makes it easier to land it. So, yeah, Special Attack 2 can stay exactly as it is. I like it quite a bit. The Special 3 is also quite solid because you get this power gain buff where you get back 100% of your max power, all 3 bars, over 35 seconds. So when you combine this with the power that she gets from gaining Bloodthirst, just by landing hits, this is really significant. She can throw a lot of specials in a fight, even before factoring in Mystic Dispersion. So things like this, you can kind of understand why they were careful with her. And this can help you cross more bars of power, which we already talked about is important for Rampage, but it also is really important for most of her class soul abilities, which we'll get to. And then there's that cool little piece of utility in the second line there, which was the subject of some very cool videos, which is that there is a flat percentage-based damage component to this Special 3 if the opponent's soul is captured. That is very cool. It allows her to solo Abyss fights. It doesn't really matter outside of Everest content, but it's cool that she's there, and so I wouldn't change the Special 3 either. But here's where we get to another big problem. Essentially, what all of this text after this means is that Purgatory wants to capture the opponent's soul, and she needs to cross 9 bars of power to do so. So, remember what we talked about with Rampage earlier. If you make it into Rampage and you use that Incinerate to pause it and also to cross back and forth over bars of power many times in short succession, you can get to 9 pretty well. The problem is that in doing so, while you may have, done a ton of damage because you were in Rampage the whole time and you felt really cool, you may kill your opponent before you gain 9 bars of power, even if this is your only focus in the entire fight. Because 9 bars of power is a lot. Now, I understand why there's this high barrier because of this next bullet point, which is that once you've captured the opponent's soul, once you've jumped through those hoops, their buffs have minus 65% ability accuracy for the rest of the fight, and there's nothing they can do about it. It's like she's placing Magneto's ability accuracy reduction on them specifically for buffs. For the rest of the fight, you don't have to do anything to maintain it. That is a very cool piece of utility. It obviously means that she crushes cosmics, but this is also really good for things like buffet or masochism. I used her to clear the masochism lanes in Act 5, and sure, the fights were long, but once she got the soul captured, the opponents basically just stopped healing because they were failing 2 out of every 3 healing triggers. It's a very powerful, very cool, and unique ability. It kind of takes her halfway in between Magneto and Tigra for buffs. So I get why they held on to this, but I think it was a mistake tying it to the soul capture specifically, because capturing a soul is the only way to get her cross-fight effects. And those are really important to her kit. Like it says here, when you capture the soul, you get access to the class ability for the champion you're facing in the next 2 fights. When she is duped, winning the fight with a special attack or in Rampage also captures the soul. In theory, it's actually somewhat bugged, but we'll just put that over to the side and assume that she works perfectly. However, if you are wrong with exactly what is going to kill the opponent, this can get very frustrating. Think of it as like Gilly 99 capturing the opponent's soul. If you throw that special 3, hoping to knock out the opponent, and you fail to, you feel really bad because you know you're not going to get to another one before you knock them out. She has that element to her kit, except there isn't any part of her kit with what Gilly has, where if she throws that special when the opponent is below 5% health, it's an instant knockout. She doesn't have something like that to make this truly safe, and so this can get kind of frustrating. I have definitely had times where I have finished the fight, or I thought I was going to finish the fight with a special 2, and it just barely didn't kill them. My demonic rampage ran out, and then the degen finished them off, and I didn't get the soul because it was a normal fight and I'd only gained like 5 bars of power, which is still a lot relative to some other characters in this game, but nowhere near 9. Now, if we made the other changes that I'm going to propose in a minute, I think that I would be fine with this particular weakness built into the kit because there is enough of a payoff. But at the moment, she basically feels unplayable if she is not duped because of how difficult it is to gain 9 bars of power in some fights. And so I do think that even without her signature ability, if you finish the fight with the special 3, it should automatically capture their soul. Let her have that Gilly 99, that Morningstar have, where even unduped, you just have a button that you can use. Okay, if you build to this, if you slow down the fight by not using the special 2, if you forego all of the healing in the special 1, and just focus on this, then you get that guaranteed payoff. I think that would go a very long way into making her more bearable. So now we get to the class soul abilities, which are the other payoff for capturing the opponent's soul. You get these whenever you are facing an opponent of this class, period, and when you capture a soul, you get it for the next 2 fights, regardless of the opponent's class. So it's possible to have up to 3 of these active in a single fight. If you beat a Mystic and then a Cosmic, and then you are facing a Tech as your 3rd fight, you will have those 3 active. And pretty much all of these have real power to them. The Mystic one gives you regen on block, which will be affected by the Recovery Mastery. And because it lasts for 6 seconds, not just for the duration of the special attack, and if she's at max sig, this goes all the way up to 9 seconds. Or sorry, 8 seconds. Then this means that you also regen on parries after this. So it's very good to her playstyle because her playstyle kind of requires blocking if you want maximum uptime on Rampage, and this makes blocking easier. The Cosmic one is just a blanket nullify. You do not have to make contact with the opponent, so this can get around glancing and some other abilities like that. And it's every time you cross a bar of power. So if your opponent has a lot of buffs, remember if you're in Rampage, if you can make it there and cross back and forth over a bar of power a lot, then you can nullify quite a few buffs. And since that can also trigger Mystic Dispersion, there's real power in that one. The Tech one is a very solid armor break, especially because its potency is increased by her signature ability, and again happens every time you cross a bar of power, so see everything above. This is another reason why the Special 3 is so good, because it gives her that guaranteed power gain, and so that just means that you are slowly going to be crossing bars and gaining these other benefits. The Mutant Soul is actually one of my favorites because it gives her a method of power control. For those of you familiar with Captain America Infinity War's synergy with Vision, where when the opponent throws a special attack, the rest of their power is drained, and how good that is in a lot of fights and how important that was to war for a long time. This is better than that because not only do they lose that power, but then you gain a bunch of it and probably cross a bar of power, triggering other abilities, possibly pausing Rampage. It's very helpful. The skill one I think is a little bit weak, but the fact that it applies a passive slow is very, very good. Essentially, your play pattern here is to get into Rampage and finish with mediums such that when the short incinerates expire, the opponent is slowed. Now, the problem is that most opponents that have Evade or Unstoppable are very difficult to hit reliably enough, often enough, for you to actually get into Rampage. And so this is one that I think missed a little bit in terms of, okay, but how does it actually work out? I'm not sure what change it really needs. Maybe this is something that should just apply on the second medium, or maybe this can just be another thing that applies when she crosses a bar of power. Because at the moment, it is the only one of the souls that, even after you earn it, requires an investment to activate, because you either have to spend power by inflicting the Incinerate with your second medium, or you have to use the Special 2 to inflict a degen, which is also a damage over time debuff. None of the other souls require you to do that, and so I think I would change that. If they insist on leaving it like this, then I think its duration needs to be upped, because this is one of the shortest slows in the game. Sure, it's passive, but you have to jump through an awful lot of hoops to get it, and the fact that it is shorter than Spider-Gwen's, Sorcerers, whose can be paused, She-Hulk's, even at max sig, I think that this base duration should probably be extended to 12 seconds, such that it can go up to 16 seconds, and that would make it significantly more viable in my opinion. But my biggest issue with her kit, and I am not the only one to say this, is that you have almost no control over which of these abilities you are able to bring to bear against opponents of a different class. You are fully at the mercy of the order of champions on a path in front of you. And that is not a great play pattern. Now, a lot of people have suggested that once she captures a soul from a certain class, she should have that ability permanently. That is certainly one way to go. I don't necessarily think she would be too strong if they did that, but I would like to offer one possible alternative to that system if they wanted to keep it a little more in check. And that is basically to give her something along the lines of what they did for the summoned symbiote the last time that came back. So make it so she has a persistent charge mechanic, and so that she has pre-fights. And she spends one charge to apply each pre-fight, and each of her 5 possible pre-fights corresponds to one of these souls that she can steal. But give her unlimited activations of a particular pre-fight once she has captured that soul in a quest. And then I think I would make it such that she gains only a limited number of charges per fight. So let's say she starts with 2, gains 2 per fight, up to a maximum of 10. If you wanted to go all in, you would probably be spending 4 or 5 charges to get all of your abilities active in a single fight, but it would give you the option to do so. It would make her much better as a potential boss killer. And it would also mean that you don't get the terrible experience of feeling like you've wasted your souls just by having to take fights with her. Like, maybe she is one of your best cosmic counters for the entire lane, and you want to use her for every single cosmic character. But you have somebody with Unstoppable coming up later, and you feel like you need the slow, so you take a skill champion down, and then there are 2 cosmic fights in a row before where you need the Unstoppable counter. You can't take both of those fights with her, or you'll have used up the skill soul, and it's just gone. But if you go with the system that I'm proposing, then you can save the charges for when you actually need them and pick and choose more along the lines of, hey, surprise, I just made a champion more like Reed. Okay. But it would allow you to go all in on certain fights where you needed it, and just rely more on her base kit where it worked for you. And I think that that would dramatically improve the overall play pattern with her, and it would make every single soul you capture feel more meaningful. Now, maybe those exact values, gaining 2 on a victory to a max of 10, maybe those wouldn't be what you would arrive at pending testing, but something along those lines where you can save the souls until you need them, I think is almost mandatory for her. If you're not going to make them permanent, then I think you need to do that. Because you need to free players from being at the mercy of just what opponents show up in what order. The other thing that this system would let you do is it would let you scale some of her abilities to be more powerful with charges and give you a reason to hold on to the souls. There would be real choice in where you used them. So I said that the healing on the special one is just too weak. It flat out is. It needs to be better. I think that its base regen should be a 20% lifesteal rather than a 10%. But what I propose is that that then improves by another 4% per charge that she has. So the ceiling on that is 60%, which is a very respectable lifesteal, but you would only get there if you had won multiple fights with her and then not spent any charges to make your current fight easier. And to me, that feels like a proper trade-off, especially because you would probably want to spend at least 1 or 2 charges in most fights to get the armor break or the power steal so that you could throw more special ones. So I feel like that would let you actually scale up her other abilities. Maybe you could do something similar with the damage of the Incinerate, since it's quite weak. But the overarching idea here is just that it would give you choice. It would give the player agency over how to deploy Purgatory properly and let them actually use her full kit as it was designed, rather than making the experience of using Purgatory a matter of, well, is this one of those one in a million paths that actually lines up so that I get the correct sequence of class souls so that she's better than just a mystic that does energy damage and is incinerate immune and occasionally hits a little bit harder? She was clearly designed to use these abilities, which are quite cool and powerful, and that's probably why she was undertuned, as she definitely is. But if you give players the freedom to build her out on a fight to fight basis according to what they want to do, kind of like how Diablo or Mr. Fantastic work, then I think we have a very cool champion on our hands here. The animations look fantastic, the design is super cool, there's utility in her that most other mystics do not have. There is incredible potential here. Like I said, with these changes, I think she would be one of my favorite mystics and one of my favorite champions in the entire game. So hopefully when Kabam gets around to rebalancing champions from before the new system that hits in March, Purgatory gets some love. Because I think that the entire community will be very pleasantly surprised when she does. Hope you all enjoyed this, and until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.